What happens with room gain is when the room transitions from the modal zone to the pressure zone, and that happens when the half wavelength of the room. You mentioned long wavelengths. As you go deeper, the wavelengths get longer. When the half wavelength becomes longer than the longest dimension in the room, and that's typically sort of the floor to corner diagonal along the room. That's the longest dimension. When the half wavelength exceeds that dimension, the room literally cannot support standing waves anymore. And through the magic of very complex mathematics, it transitions to a pressure zone. So you can actually move about the room, and the bass response below that transition frequency is actually quite uniform. And in a medium-sized room, that starts to happen somewhere in the 32, 33, 34 hertz range. In a larger room, the transition frequency is deeper. In a smaller room, it's higher. If you're listening in a really small room, I've seen it transition to room gain at 40 hertz. So it is dimensionally dependent, but at some frequency, the room transitions to a pressure zone. It doesn't support standing waves. And if you're running a monopole subwoofer, theoretically, room gain can add 12 dB per octave. It's a transfer function. We don't see that maximum value very often in real life because the rooms are not perfectly rigid vessels, right? You've got some flex on the windows, you've got flex on the walls, you've got maybe one permanent opening in the room. These things conspire against getting the maximum amount of room gain. But what we typically see is something along the lines of maybe 7 to 9 dB per octave of room gain, and that's free bass. It's a very significant rising response down deep. So, let's say we start showing room gain at 34 hertz. At 17 hertz, which is an octave deeper, you could be looking at almost 10 dB of additional room gain down low. And to make best use of that, our sealed subwoofers actually do the best job of that because we have engineered the roll off profile of our sealed subwoofers to essentially be the inverse of the room gain transfer function in a typical size room. So as the subwoofer's rolling off anechoically, the room's adding bass from a room gain standpoint. What's the result? Flat line of deep extension where the subwoofer extends far deeper than it would in an anechoic situation, simply due to room gain. So I've seen our sealed subwoofers in a well constructed room with a lot of room gain. I've seen some of our sealed sub models literally measure flat to 10 hertz or even 8 hertz. That's remarkable when you look at the quasi-anechoic curve of the subwoofer as we measured it outdoors. It might be 20 dB down at 10 hertz, and suddenly it's flat to 10 hertz in room. So you've got all this free bass that can enhance your listening experience and contribute to deeper extension in room.